The need to preserve anatomical specimens has existed for a very long time. And fortunately, anatomists were able to rely on alcohol and formalin. But these specimens dry out. They can develop mold. They give off a very unpleasant odor, and their usefulness in anatomical teaching is quite limited.
The
big difference with plastination is that the specimens are permanently preserved. They are dry, odorless, and you can literally grasp them. That's what makes plastinates so valuable for anatomical education. In everything he did, in inventing plastination, Gunther subordinated absolutely everything in his life to this mission, both privately and professionally. He invested all his time, he neglected his young family, he put all his personal money into it, took out large personal loans to buy a new bandsaw or to purchase polymers, all just to advance the technology. And he was utterly obsessed. But this was his life.
Das war sein Leben.
Even though many people ridiculed him and didn't take him seriously. At some point, his then boss at the Anatomical Institute said, "Gunther, that was a good idea, but now it's time to get back to doing real science." But he just couldn't let go of the idea, and as a consequence, he had to leave the Anatomical Institute for some time. About a year, maybe a year and a half later, he returned. And this time, as part of his research assignment, he was allowed to focus exclusively on plastination. Because he approached things very unconventionally, he naturally also constantly searched for unconventional ways to reach his goal. And that certainly included not relying on established methods, but looking for things that you wouldn't normally find in a university laboratory. Cooking spoons, household appliances, even my pantyhose were once used to strain a batch of plastic to filter out tissue residues. It was just a very colorful life that surrounded him, and he enjoyed every single day of it. Plastination is actually a very complex process, but simply put, it's the replacement of the body's water with a polymer such as silicone. This means that every single cell that once contained water is now filled with this polymer, and as a result, the anatomical specimen retains its complete structure right down to the microscopic level. Once the polymer has cured, the specimens are dry. They are odorless and above all will last at least as long as the polymer itself remains. Plastination was really just something we used for teaching anatomy at the university. The thought of doing a public exhibition hadn't even crossed our minds at first. But then, in 1995, we got an invitation from the Japanese Anatomical Society. They were celebrating their 100th anniversary and were planning a public exhibition at the Tokyo National Science Museum. And Gunther and me, being adventurous as we were, we thought, yes, why not? We'd be happy to do that.
Ja, das machen wir sehr gerne.
In Japan, there was suddenly such a huge success that no one had really expected, not even the museum. Over 450,000 people came, with some waiting in line for hours just to get into the exhibition. And it wasn't just the large numbers that were so impressive. What was truly remarkable was how people reacted once they were inside. It was truly moving to see how meaningful viewing these plastinates was for people who, for the first time, seemed to gain a completely new understanding of their own physicality. There were so many touching stories that very quickly made it clear to us that we could continue pursuing this idea. For example, there was a younger woman there, she might have been in her late 20s or early 30s, who started crying in the exhibition, and she finally said that she had felt worthless her whole life, good for nothing, and that she had already tried several times to take her own life. But now, seeing how wonderfully the body is made and how intricately everything works together, she felt that she had something truly special inside her. And she promised she would never do that again.
Und sie verspricht, sie wird das nie wieder tun. Die Plastinate, die wir in Japan zeigten, waren natürlich
The plastinates we showed in Japan were, of course, not primarily made for a public exhibition. They were created for anatomical teaching and might have looked rather unusual to someone without a medical background.
Das hat uns sehr schnell gezeigt, dass die Plastinate, wenn wir damit
This quickly showed us that if we wanted to present plastinates to a public audience, they would need, beyond their scientific content, another quality, namely an aesthetic one. And that was a moment when we immediately thought of the old Renaissance anatomists like Andreas Vesalius or Michelangelo, who presented their anatomical drawings in a very lifelike way, in lively poses, and above all, with great aesthetic refinement. It became clear to us that if we wanted to continue with this idea, our plastinates must also have an aesthetic dimension.
People have often claimed that the exhibition violates human dignity. But no one has ever really explained how exactly it's supposed to do that. It doesn't make much sense to accuse an exhibition of beautifully prepared specimens of violating human dignity, especially when we consider what is generally accepted elsewhere. If it is considered acceptable for bodies to be cremated or to decompose in graves, if it is considered acceptable for transplant medicine and surgery to dissect donated bodies, then considering this, it cannot be proven at all that the exhibition violates human dignity. At least not if these other practices are regarded as compatible with dignity.
The debates and the criticism were really intense, and of course that took a toll on us, especially on me personally.
Und ich finde das einfach ethisch und moralisch nicht richtig.
The most important aspect that speaks for the respect of human dignity in the exhibition is the way visitors behave.
We looked into the exhibition each day and saw the enthusiastic visitors and spoke with them about how meaningful the experience was for them. We met people who, despite long waiting times, had come to the exhibition 7 or 8 times because they still hadn't had enough and wanted to take more away from it. And that gave us so much in return, so much confidence back, that we said, no matter how harsh the criticism is, it's a good thing that we're doing this work.
Gute Sache, dass wir daran arbeiten.
This behavior shows that the exhibition organizers succeeded in creating a dignified presentation, one that is also supported by the exhibition setting. It doesn't have the atmosphere of a carnival. It is rather a very contemplative place. In my view, the design of the exhibition provides a dignified platform for the plastinates, and the visitors' behavior honors that as well. According to the critics, the aesthetic presentation takes away the educational purpose of the plastinates. But it's no coincidence that in the history of modern anatomy, whenever anatomical atlases depict whole bodies, they always show them in lively poses, because they are always in some way posed. And that actually makes a lot of sense. Beyond helping to overcome the initial threshold of fear, it also serves the very good purpose that anatomy aims to inform about life, to celebrate life, and to make it appealing. That's why I find the accusation completely misplaced that human bodies are being degraded into artworks in the exhibition. I would put it quite the other way around. In the exhibition, human bodies are elevated to the status of artworks, and rightfully so. Und das mit Recht.
The intense controversy actually only took place in Germany, and nothing similar happened in any other European or non-European country.
Diese Menschen haben ein Recht darauf, nach dem Tod in Ruhe gelassen zu werden.
And it's reasonable to assume that this has to do with Germany's more recent history. I believe that the use of people, and especially the unethical use of dead bodies, is still deeply rooted in our collective consciousness. And people are very sensitive when it comes to the use of real human specimens. I believe that at the end of the day, it's actually a good thing to engage critically with the subject. But in all of our work, we have made a great effort to handle this question with care. We have always ensured that we only use bodies of deceased individuals who had consented to plastination and to being shown in a public exhibition. And I believe there are many reasons to conclude that human dignity is not being violated here.
Hier keine Menschenwürde verletzt wird.
The discussions, especially in the German-speaking world, never really died down. And at some point, Gunther began to add his own share, namely by pouring fuel on the fire. He did enjoy provoking, and this ultimately made him an increasing target of criticism.
Zentrum der Kritik gelangte.
Today, Body Worlds is no longer as much of a sensation as it was in the early days. And by now, people have also come to understand that the exhibition is not about providing a cheap thrill, but rather about conveying valuable information, offering a profound experience, and serving as a place for self-reflection. Body Worlds has long since become part of our society, and it has embedded itself deeply into our cultural memory. For example, when we listen to satirists, watch a late-night show, or see the James Bond film Casino Royale, where Body Worlds provided a particular setting. Over the years, the exhibition has, of course, changed a great deal. In the early days, it was predominantly a purely anatomical exhibition. But I realized quite early on that visitors were actually more interested in learning something about their own lives. In other words, in experiencing anatomy that is relevant to everyday life. And that's why I began developing themes for the exhibitions that present the body anatomically, but from a specific perspective.
Anatomy means illuminating the darkness of life with the light of death. And that is what happens in this exhibition. By bringing life and death together here, the uniqueness of life emerges all the more clearly against the backdrop of death, a life that, in this exhibition, presents and celebrates itself. That's why I like to describe this exhibition as an event in which life celebrates itself, and that is something that truly inspires awe. It's not just the plastinates themselves that make us marvel, but through them we marvel at our own lives. And that is where the special value of this exhibition lies for each and every visitor.
The body is the foundation of our existence. We have it for an entire lifetime, and in a way, we are our bodies. Without them, we would have no experiences, no memories, no thoughts, no family, no friends. The thing that's missing is a window. We can't look inside it. If we can't see into the body, we usually only start thinking about it when it's no longer working properly.
So richtig funktioniert.
Body Worlds opens exactly that window. In the exhibition, we look at other people's bodies, but what we discover in them is, in fact, ourselves.
Das sind wir selbst.